I want to begin with a letter that arrived in my inbox at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning in March 2023, which I know precisely because I still have it, and I have the habit, from 36 years working for the Ohio Department of Transportation, of noting the time of important documents. The letter was from the administrator of my state pension fund. It was 3 paragraphs long. The first paragraph explained a change to the fund's investment policy that had reduced the projected growth rate for the period 2022 through 2025. The second paragraph detailed the resulting adjustment to my monthly benefit, a reduction of 14%, effective the 1st of May. The third paragraph thanked me for my continued participation in the fund and wished me well. My name is Kenneth. I am 69 years old. I live in Pattaya, Thailand, and I want to tell you about the year that letter opened. I should explain what kind of man I was before I explain what the letter did to him. I want to add something to the 36 years in highway planning that is relevant to what followed, which is the specific discipline of working in a federal regulatory environment. Highway planning in the United States is governed by an interlocking set of federal, state, and local requirements that are updated periodically, that are administered by different agencies with different interpretations, and that produce, over a career, a very particular professional skill. The ability to track a regulatory framework across time and identify when something has changed and what the change means for the project at hand. I was, I believe without false modesty, among the better practitioners of this skill in the Ohio Department of Transportation. I had sat through 12 Federal Register updates that affected our work, through 3 significant reorganizations of how Ohio administered federal highway dollars, and through 1 complete replacement of our environmental impact assessment process in 2014 that required retraining approximately 240 staff. I did not find any of this distressing. I found it technically interesting. The way a maintenance engineer finds a failed component interesting. Here is what broke. Here is what the system requires. Here is what we do to bring the system back into compliance. This is the skill set I applied to my retirement planning. It is also the skill set that made the letter in March 2023 the most personally bewildering experience of my professional life, because I had done the regulatory tracking correctly, and the regulatory framework had changed underneath me in a way that tracking could not have prevented, only detected, and by the time I detected it, the deadline for easy adjustment had passed. I should explain what kind of man I was before I explain what the letter did to him. I am not by nature a man who takes risks. I spent 36 years as a public servant in highway planning because highway planning is a field in which the rules are comprehensible, the outcomes are measurable, and the man who follows the process correctly gets the result the process promises. I reviewed environmental impact assessments. I approved right-of-way acquisitions. I coordinated with federal requirements on a schedule that did not change significantly between 1987 and 2021. I was not ambitious in the corporate sense, and I was not afraid of that, because ambition in a government department is largely a form of optimism about things you cannot control. And I preferred the things I could control, and the things I could control I controlled very well, and the 36 years of doing them very well produced, at my retirement in June 2022, a package that I had been modeling in a spreadsheet since 2015. The spreadsheet was not complicated. It had 3 inputs: the pension, the Social Security, and the savings. The pension was $2,340 a month, guaranteed, indexed to the Ohio CPI, backed by the state of Ohio. The Social Security was $1,890, beginning at 67, which I had timed correctly. The savings were $295,000, which at a conservative 3% drawdown extended to $2,038, at which point I would be 84, and which I had verified with a fee-only financial planner in Cincinnati named Mr. Hoffman, who had charged me $600 for 2 hours, and had described the plan as solid, which was the highest praise I had ever received for something I had not built with concrete. I came to Thailand in 2019 on a trip I had been planning since 2016. I want to be precise about the planning because the planning is character. Let me say something about Cincinnati itself, because the 13 months between the retirement and the move were a period I have not described, and they are relevant to why this recording ends where it does, rather than in Ohio. I had a house in Cincinnati, in the Hyde Park neighborhood, that I had owned for 24 years and that I sold in September 2022 for $287,000, about 60% of the Pattaya savings, and the sale was the cleanest decision of the whole process. I had loved the house for most of those 24 years, and by the end, I was spending the weekends maintaining it rather than inhabiting it, which is the symptom that tells you the relationship has changed. My sister Barbara lives 8 blocks away, in a similar house, and she and I are close in the way that siblings who have navigated a family together and then lived separate adult lives can be close. A closeness based on history and genuine affection and a sensible distance. She was not alarmed when I announced Pattaya, which surprised me. She said that in her observation, I had been planning to leave Cincinnati for about 6 years, which was accurate, and that she was glad I had a plan, which was kind, and that she would visit if there was a reasonable hotel nearby, which I was able to confirm. She has not yet visited. The reasonable hotel remains available. I mentioned Cincinnati because the Cincinnati years, the years of the model building, the scouting trip, the spreadsheet with Mr. Hoffman, were years of enormous forward attention. I was looking at 2022 and 2027 and 2038, and the figures those years contained, and I was not looking at Hyde Park on a Sunday afternoon when the light came through the kitchen window in the way it did in October and November, and that I have not found elsewhere. I mention this not to suggest I made the wrong decision. I did not make the wrong decision. The matrix was correct. Pattaya is where I should be. But because a man who builds a model for the future should also know what the model is costing him in the present, and the present tense costs of leaving a city of 24 years are not on the spreadsheet, and they are real, and they are part of the full accounting. I came to Thailand in 2019 on a trip I had been planning since 2016. I had identified Thailand in 2016 as the most cost-effective retirement destination available to a man on my income, and I had spent 3 years reading, researching, and visiting forums before I took the scouting trip. The scouting trip was 11 days, 3 cities, Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Pattaya, and I kept notes on each with a standard evaluation template I had developed for the purpose, covering cost of living, healthcare access, expat infrastructure, and quality of life indicators. Pattaya scored highest on my matrix, which surprised several people when I told them, because Pattaya has a reputation I had accounted for as a variable and had weighted accordingly. What the reputation obscures is that Pattaya has 2 private hospitals with Joint Commission International accreditation, a large and settled expat community with formal support structures, a cost of living approximately 60% below Cincinnati's for equivalent quality, and a Jomtien beach, that is, in the early morning before 9 o'clock, as quiet and clean a place to walk as anywhere I have been. I weighed the factors, and the factors said Pattaya, and I moved to Pattaya, and my matrix was correct about all of the things I had put in it, and the letter arrived in March 2023, about a thing I had not put in it. In the interest of completeness, which I consider a professional obligation, I want to give you my other pre-retirement research findings. Let me give you 2022 first, the year before the letter, because 2022 is the year I had earned and the year I want to account for honestly before I account for what it became. I arrived in Pattaya in October 2022, 6 weeks after my retirement date, with 2 suitcases, the spreadsheet on my laptop, and the specific lightness of a man who has been carrying a very large project for a very long time and has set it down. I had a furnished studio in Jomtien that I had leased for the first 4 months as a trial before committing to the condo purchase, which was the right sequence and which I want to note because I am giving you the full picture, including the things I did correctly, and I did most things correctly. The early mornings on Jomtien Beach were exactly what the Matrix had predicted. Quiet, clean, the fishing boats coming in, the light coming across from the east and making the water the specific color that the scouting trip photographs had shown me. I found the hospital that I wanted, attended 2 expat information evenings at the British Club and the American Association, identified the restaurants I would use regularly, set up my Thai bank account and the first of my regular monthly transfers, located the laundry and the market and the pharmacy and the optician. By the end of November, I had built the Pattaya infrastructure with the same systematic approach I had applied to highway planning, and the infrastructure worked, and I was living in it, and the living was good. I want that year on the record. The letter arrived in March 2023, and the year before the letter was good. In the interest of completeness, which I consider a professional obligation, I want to give you my other pre-retirement research findings. I had read the retirement visa requirements for Thailand and verified them with the Royal Thai Embassy in Washington, D.C., and with an immigration lawyer in Bangkok, and with 3 separate expat forums. I had noted that the requirement was an income of 65,000 baht a month, or a deposit of 800,000 baht in a Thai bank account, and that my projected pension plus Social Security, converted at the rates prevailing in 2019, exceeded 65,000 baht, with approximately 12,000 baht of surplus. I had researched health insurance for Americans over 65 in Thailand, and had identified a policy with a reputable international insurer that covered pre-existing conditions other than the 2 I had declared, a history of elevated cholesterol and a right knee that had been surgically repaired in 2009, and the premium was $4,800 a year, which I had built into the drawdown model as a non-negotiable line item. I had, in other words, done everything that the process required of a man doing this correctly, and the process, in 2019, was a process that worked. The letter arrived in 2023 about a process that had changed. The dismantling had 4 stages, and they arrived in the following order. Stage 1 was the pension letter. The 14% reduction dropped my monthly pension from $2,340 to $2,012, effective May 2023. The fund's investment returns had underperformed across a 2-year period that the administrator, in the letter, described using the phrase challenging market conditions, which in my professional experience is the phrase bureaucrats use when they would prefer not to specify what actually happened. I did not argue with the letter, because the fund's rules permitted the adjustment, and I had read the fund's rules and they were clear, and I had noted, when I read them in 2018, the existence of this provision, and had assessed it as unlikely to be invoked. Unlikely is not impossible. The reduction translated, at the exchange rate of May 2023, to approximately 11,000 fewer baht a month. I updated my spreadsheet. The surplus of 12,000 became a deficit of something under 1,000. The 12,000 baht of buffer I had maintained as a discipline vanished entirely, and in its place was a monthly shortfall that the drawdown would need to cover, and the drawdown was now beginning earlier and at a higher rate than the model had assumed. I moved the horizon from 2038 to 2035. Stage 2 arrived in August 2023, and it arrived without a letter. It arrived as an announcement on the Thai Immigration Authority's website, which I checked periodically with the same diligence that I once checked Federal Register notices about highway design standards. I should give you what the months between the stages actually felt like, because accounts of financial difficulty tend to compress the time between events into a clean narrative, and the clean narrative misses the actual experience, which is mostly waiting. Between March and August 2023, I was living in a condo I had bought, walking on a knee that still worked, using an insurance policy that had not yet betrayed me, paying a premium that had not yet increased, and I was doing all of this against the background awareness that the model I had built was now running at a deficit of 1,000 baht a month. 1,000 baht is not a catastrophe. It is about $28. It is the kind of shortfall that a careful man covers from savings while he adjusts. And I was adjusting, and the adjustment was a quiet and somewhat cheerless process of reviewing the model's assumptions against the new reality and identifying the specific places where the model had been wrong. I had 2 coffees a day and reduced to 1. I had eaten at 3 restaurants and reduced to 2, cutting the most expensive one, which I did not miss in the way I thought I would. I bought less of the imported food from the shops that carry things from home. Ohio had certain brands that I had brought with me emotionally, if not practically, things that made the kitchen feel familiar. And I was buying fewer of them, and the kitchen was slightly less familiar. And this was fine. These are small things. I list them because the small things are what the period was made of. And the small things accumulate in a way that the stages of the dismantling do not. And the accumulation is the actual texture of living through a model that is going wrong. In July, I went back to Cincinnati for 3 weeks. My sister lives there, my college roommate and his wife, my former colleagues at ODOT. I did not tell any of them the details of the letter or the model, because the details would have required me to explain choices they had thought were eccentric when I made them. And the being right about those choices had been part of the story I had moved to Thailand on, and I was not ready to revise the story in front of people who had watched me build it. I told them I was fine. I was enjoying Pattaya. The weather was excellent. The food was extraordinary. And this was all true. And the leaving out of 1,000 baht a month in deficit is not dishonesty, it is prioritization. And I have spent 36 years prioritizing what to include in communications to stakeholders. The stakeholders did not need the detail. I returned to Thailand in August, and the immigration website had its announcement. And the prioritization changed. Stage 2 arrived in August 2023. The announcement was a modification to the income verification requirements for the Thai retirement visa. Previously, income from an overseas pension could be verified by a notarized statement from the issuing institution, which my Ohio Department of Transportation Human Resources Department produced for me annually at no charge in about 3 business days. The modified requirement added a condition. The income must be verifiable as regular monthly transfers into a Thai bank account, with 12 months of statements showing consistent receipt. I had been managing my finances on a transfer-as-needed basis, moving money from my U.S. account to my Thai account in blocks when I anticipated a significant expense, which is an efficient method and which is not the same as 12 regular monthly transfers of consistent amount. I was not in compliance with the modified requirement. I had been a legal resident of Thailand for 2 years at the point the requirement changed, and I became out of compliance with no action on my part beyond the calendar turning to August. I want to be exact about this, because it is the detail that still surprises me most in retrospect. I had done nothing wrong. The rules had changed. This is the sentence the letter should have used, but the letter used "rules changed" in the passive voice, which removes the actor, and the actor, the institution that changed the rules, had every right to change them and no obligation to do so on a schedule that suited me. I spent 4 months regularizing my transfer pattern and acquiring the required documentation, with the assistance of an immigration lawyer in Pattaya whose fee was $12,000 for the full service, because I had waited too long after the announcement to handle it myself, and because the lawyer's quote had the specific confidence of a man who knows his market, and his market was men like me who had been correct about everything until they weren't. The regularization process is something I want to describe in practical terms, because it is a process that every American in Thailand with an income from an overseas source needs to understand, and that is not described accurately in most of the places people look for it. What was required was 12 months of bank statements showing regular monthly transfers from an overseas account to my Thai account, each transfer clearly identified as pension or retirement income. The word "clearly identified" is doing work in that requirement. The transfers need to be accompanied by reference information that the Thai bank recognizes and records correctly, and if they are not, the bank statements do not show what they need to show, and the documentation is inadequate, and you go back to your lawyer, who charges an additional consulting fee for the remediation. I had 4 months of transfers that were correctly formatted and 8 months that were not, because the system I had used before August 2023 did not include the required reference information. The lawyer's team remediated the 8 months through a combination of additional documentation from the pension fund and bank letters, which is available but time-consuming and expensive, and the full service included submitting the revised documentation to the immigration office, attending with me, and managing the questions that arose. It worked. It cost $12,000. It should have cost $600. a session with an immigration knowledgeable advisor in 2022, before I moved, confirming the transfer format requirements. This is the second thing I would put in Mr. Hoffman's presentation. The cost of not knowing the documentation requirements precisely at the point of arrival is substantially higher than the cost of knowing them. I spent 4 months regularizing my transfer pattern and acquiring the required documentation. I resent the $12,000 less than I resent the additional 2 months of anxiety about my legal status in a country I had chosen in good faith. But I resent both, and the resentment has nowhere to go, which is the specific character of this kind of loss. Stage 3 came in November 2023, and it came from the insurance company. My policy renewal arrived with a 31% premium increase, which my insurer attributed, in their letter, to adjusted actuarial assessments for the 65-plus cohort in Southeast Asia. I was 68. I was in the cohort. I had not made a single claim in 2 years. The premium rose from $4,800 to $6,288. The difference, $1,488, was $124 a month, which in baht at November 2023 rates was approximately $4,500. Added to the pension shortfall, I was now facing a monthly gap of approximately 16,000 baht against the model I had built in 2019. I updated the spreadsheet. The horizon moved from 2035 to 2031. I should mention the knee at this point, because the knee is the 4th stage and it requires the insurance context to make sense. My right knee, the one surgically repaired in 2009, had been managed without difficulty since the repair. Physical therapy, occasional cortisone injections, the kind of daily management that a careful man applies to an acknowledged weakness in a system. In February 2024, it became not manageable. The orthopedic surgeon at the hospital recommended a partial replacement, which he estimated at 1,250,000 baht. My insurance policy covered joint replacement. I filed the claim. The insurer reviewed the file and declined, citing a clause in the policy that classified the 2009 repair as a pre-existing condition and all subsequent treatment as related, which made the partial replacement an excluded procedure, regardless of the cause or timing of the deterioration. I had disclosed the 2009 repair at the time of application. The policy had covered the knee's management for 2 years. The same facts that had been acceptable facts in 2021 were unacceptable facts in 2024, because the policy, when it had renewed in November, had tightened its pre-existing condition language in a way that I had not noticed in the 64 pages of renewal documentation, and that I would be tempted to characterize as predatory if I had not spent 36 years in a field where 64-page documents contain clauses that change things, and a professional reviews all 64 pages, and I had not reviewed all 64 pages, and I paid 1,250,000 baht from savings. In American dollars, just under 36,000. The horizon moved from 2031 to 2027. I want to give you the 64 pages, because I promised completeness, and the 64 pages are where my professional discipline failed me, and I want to account for it accurately. The health insurance renewal that arrived in November 2023 was a standard renewal pack, a cover letter, a summary of changes, the full policy document of 64 pages, and a premium invoice. I read the cover letter and the summary of changes. The summary described the premium increase and 3 minor adjustments to coverage for specific treatments. It did not describe the change to the pre-existing condition language in Section 7.3.2 of the full policy, because the change was classified as a clarification of existing language rather than a substantive coverage modification, and clarifications do not require disclosure in the summary. I had spent 36 years reading documents that made exactly this distinction, the distinction between a substantive change and a clarification of existing language, and I had applied it to other people's documents hundreds of times, and I applied it to my own insurance renewal by reading the summary and concluding that Section 7.3.2 had not materially changed, without verifying that conclusion by reading Section 7.3.2. The verification would have taken 11 minutes. I have verified this since, reading it deliberately with the pen I use for important documents, timing myself. 11 minutes. The 11 minutes would have told me that the language around the 2009 repair had tightened in a way that expanded the exclusion, and I would have spent those 11 minutes investigating alternative policies, and I would have found one. I know this because I found one in April 2024, after the denial, a different insurer with more favorable language, at a higher premium, but with the knee's history treated differently. The 11 minutes cost me $36,000, and my confidence in my own professional habits, and I am including this in the recording because a careful man who fails at carefulness is not a special case. He is, in certain conditions of fatigue or comfort or overconfidence in a completed task, a man who skips section 7.3.2, and the insurance companies know this, and they rely on it, and I was relying on it too, which is the most expensive miscalibration of my retirement. I paid 1,250,000 baht from savings. In American dollars, just under 36,000. The horizon moved from 2031 to 2027. Let me give you the number, because the number is what I have, and having it is what I have left of the plan. I arrived with $295,000 in savings, and a model that reached to 2038. I will run out of savings in 2027, at which point I will be 72, and my income will be my pension at $2,012, and my Social Security at $1,890, which totals $3,902 a month, which at current rates is about 138,000 baht, which is more than the 65,000 baht required by the Thai retirement visa, and which will, in theory, support a simpler life than the one I had planned, but a life. The knee replacement is healing. I walk with a cane on uneven surfaces, and without one on flat ones. I have reduced my health insurance to a lower-tier policy that covers hospitalization only, which is a risk I have calculated and accepted on the grounds that a man of 69 who has paid $36,000 out of pocket for a knee replacement is a man who has personally guaranteed a level of medical care whether or not his insurance agrees to participate. I want to tell you about the 3 men at the immigration office in November, because the 3 men are the education I could not buy from Mr. Hoffman at $600 an hour. I should add the one other man at the immigration office that I have not mentioned, because he is the 4th character and the most useful one. He was in the queue behind me, arrived after I did, had documentation I could see was orderly and well organized, a folder with tabs, similar to mine, and I noted this in the way that professional recognition works, which is quickly and without announcement. We waited together in silence for about 40 minutes, and when the 3rd man was sent away to re-notarize his income letter, the man behind me, American I thought, from his accent when he spoke to the officer, late 60s, the look of a man who had done this many times and intended to continue, turned to me and said, just audible, every time, 2 words. I said, every time what? And he said, something changes. And then his number was called, and he collected his stamp and left, and I did not see him again, and the conversation was 35 words including the question, and it was the most efficient education I received in 2023. He was not bitter. He was not warning me. He was describing the operating condition, matter-of-factly, in the way of a man who has adjusted his expectations to include the fact that things change, and who has built the adjustability into his planning rather than the expectation of stability. I had not built the adjustability in. I had built the stability in. The American with the tabbed folder had been here long enough to know that the stability is the thing you do not get, and the adjustability is the thing you keep, and the adjustability he had and I was learning. I want to tell you about the 3 men at the immigration office in November. I was there for the visa renewal, with my documentation in order, in the folder I use for all official correspondence, with the translations and the notarizations and the 12 months of transfer statements that I now maintain as a matter of policy. The 3 men in the queue ahead of me were also there for renewals and were in various states of preparedness. The first had his documentation in order and was through the counter in 9 minutes. The second had most of his documentation and was through in 22 minutes with a supplementary form. The third had an income letter from his fund that was formatted in a way the officer did not accept, and he was sent away to get it re-notarized, and I watched him leave with the specific expression of a man who has just understood that a thing he believed was complete is not complete, and that the incompleteness is going to cost him a trip that he cannot fully afford. We did not speak, but I recognized him. I was him, in March 2023, reading the 3 paragraphs that rearranged my model, and the recognition was not comforting, but it was human, and in Pattaya, at a Thai immigration queue on a November morning, human is sometimes enough. The condo. I have not mentioned the condo, and I should, because the condo is the pivot, and the pivot is the ending of this recording that is not a defeat. Let me add something about the condo purchase decision in 2022, because it is the decision that ultimately saved me, and it saved me for a reason that I did not have in the model at the time. When I bought the studio in Jomtien in April 2022 for 2,800,000 baht, I was buying it primarily on the grounds of cost efficiency. The carrying cost was lower than renting equivalent space over a long horizon, and the foreign quota freehold gave me a legal asset in my own name, which was important to my sense of security in a country where I own no land. What I did not model, because property appreciation in a specific building in a specific Thai coastal city was genuinely unmodelable with the data available to me, was that the Jomtien condo market over 2022 and 2023 would perform as it performed. The building's occupancy increased. 2 new hotels opened within a kilometer and drove tourist traffic. A German couple 3 floors above me sold in October 2023 for 3,300,000, a full 500,000 above their purchase price. And when their listing posted on the building's notice board, I did the arithmetic in the elevator in approximately 30 seconds and called my agent from the lobby. I sold in March 2024, 1 week after the knee surgery, for 3,100,000. The agent's fee and transfer costs came to about 120,000 baht. Net proceeds, approximately 2,980,000 baht, or about $84,000 at the rates of the day, against an original investment of 79,000. Not a large gain. Enough. The condo. I have not mentioned the condo, and I should, because the condo is the pivot, and the pivot is the ending of this recording. That is not a defeat. I bought a studio in Jomtien in 2022 for 2,800,000 baht, about $80,000, on the foreign quota freehold basis, in my own name, which is the correct structure, and which I had verified with 3 independent sources before signing. The condo was comfortable and had a view of the sea from the 14th floor, and served the life I had planned. In March 2024, 6 weeks after the knee surgery, I sold it for 3,100,000 baht, a modest appreciation, about 9% across 2 years, and moved to a rental in central Pattaya for 10,000 baht a month. The rent is $3,500 a year against the combined condo costs of approximately 14,000 per year when fees, insurance, and maintenance were included. The difference, $10,000 a year, extends the runway significantly. The view is a building. The building is fine. I have the early morning walk on Jomtien Beach, which I still take 3 mornings a week on the rebuilt knee, at a slower pace than in 2022, on flat concrete. My matrix said Pattaya. My matrix was right. I want to end with the spreadsheet, because the spreadsheet is the honest ending, and I am a man who ends with the honest thing rather than the comfortable one. The current spreadsheet, as of this month, has the following inputs. Pension, $2,012 a month. Social Security, $1,890 a month. Savings remaining after the knee and the legal fees and the condo transaction costs, approximately $112,000. Drawdown rate to bridge to 2027, $2,200 a month, which is higher than the original model and which depletes the savings at the new projected date. From 2027 onward, income only, at $3,902 a month, which is approximately 138,000 baht at current rates. Living costs in the second road studio, conservatively estimated 45,000 baht a month, which includes rent, insurance, food, transport, and a contingency line for the unexpected. That leaves approximately 93,000 baht a month surplus from 2027, which is the surplus of a man living carefully in Pattaya, which is what I am. I have rebuilt the model with 3 additional assumptions that the 2015 version did not include: the pension as reducible by up to 20%, the visa requirements as reviewable annually with a legal consultation budget of 20,000 baht, and the insurance policy as readable in full, all 64 pages, every November. The model with those 3 assumptions reaches 2040, at which point I will be 85. The model was 2038. I have adjusted 2 years further than the original, by being more pessimistic about the inputs and more realistic about the process. I want to end with the spreadsheet. Let me give you the present first, because the present is the data that the model is currently producing, and I want you to have it before the conclusion. I live in a studio on the 5th floor of a building on 2nd Road in central Pattaya, which is not Jomtien, and which has no sea view, and which has a 7-Eleven on the corner, and a market 50 meters to the north, and a hospital 12 minutes by bike taxi, and a bus to Jomtien that leaves every 40 minutes, and that I take 3 mornings a week for the early walk, leaving at 5:40, and arriving before 6, and walking for an hour in the direction of the pier, and returning before the beach fills. The studio costs 10,000 baht a month. The insurance costs, on the new policy, $6,200 a year, which at current rates is approximately 22,000 baht a month, which is higher than before, and which I pay for hospitalization coverage and not for anything that might be characterized as comprehensive. The knee rehabilitation I paid for directly, in cash, from the hospital's payment plan, and it is complete, and the outcome is that I walk without a cane on flat surfaces, which is the outcome the surgeon promised, and which has been met, and I consider this a contractual success. I eat well. I have found, across 2.5 years of systematic exploration, the 12 restaurants in Pattaya that offer what I need at what I am prepared to pay, and I rotate among them on a schedule that provides variety and predictability, which are the 2 qualities I have always required of systems. I have a library card at the Pattaya City Library, which I did not know existed until I was looking for somewhere to sit in the air conditioning during the hot season, and which has turned out to be one of the better amenities in my current life. I read there on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. The librarian knows my name. I know hers. I want to end with the spreadsheet, the model that reaches 2027 without savings and then continues on income alone, is a workable model. It is not the model I built in 2015. Let me give you the specific advice, because I have been asked for it. By 3 men at the immigration office, and by 2 in the expat forums I participate in, and by my college roommate when I finally told him the number in December, by which time the worst of it was over, and the telling was information rather than alarm. The advice is 3 things, and the 3 things are what I would put in Mr. Hoffman's presentation if I were revising it today. The first, build the model on the income floor, not the income projection. What I built in 2015 was a model on the pension as projected, the Social Security as scheduled, and the savings as invested. What I should have built was a model on the pension minus 15%, because pension funds have adjustment provisions, and because 15% is a conservative estimate of what adjustment looks like in practice. And if the pension performs as projected, the surplus is a cushion, and if it does not, the model still works. I would have had a different starting conversation with Mr. Hoffman if I had opened with, assume my pension drops by 15%, and he would have charged me another $600 to redo the projections, and it would have been $600 with a measurable return. The second, model the visa requirement as a variable, not a fixed cost. The income threshold and the verification method are administrative decisions by a foreign government that has no obligation to consult you before changing them. Build in the cost of a lawyer who knows the current requirements, and schedule an annual review, and budget for the possibility that what you are currently doing will need to change. The third, read section 7.3.2. Every year, all 64 pages. Time it, 11 minutes. Put it in the calendar. The model that reaches 2027 without savings, and then continues on income alone, is a workable model. It is not the model I built in 2015. The 2015 model was built on the assumption that the institutions I depended on would behave predictably, which is an assumption that 36 years of working in a government department had trained me to make. Because in a government department the rules are the rules, and the process is the process. And if you follow them correctly, you get the result they promise. I want to add one more thing to the spreadsheet section, which is the thing the spreadsheet cannot contain, and which I have been circling since I started recording. There is a man at the Pattaya City Library on Tuesday afternoons, retired, I think, from something in the financial sector, British accent, always in the same chair near the periodicals, who has been coming to the library on the same days I have, for about 4 months. We have not spoken. We nod when one of us arrives, and the other is already there. The specific nod of two people who have recognized each other without having been introduced, and who have decided that the non-introduction is acceptable to both of them. Last Tuesday he was not there, which I noticed, and I found myself checking the chair at 30-minute intervals across the afternoon, which I also noticed, and which is a data point the spreadsheet does not have a column for. It belongs in the model somewhere, and I have not yet built the column, but I am aware that it exists, and that a retirement planning process that accounts for income and expenditure and regulatory compliance, and does not account for the quality of a Tuesday afternoon, is a planning process with a significant gap in it. I have been in Pattaya for 2.5 years. I have the walk and the library and the 12 restaurants and the immigration folder and the annual insurance review and the new model that reaches 2040. What I am still working on is what the man in the periodicals chair would be filed under, and whether the column for him is a cost or a return, and what the rate is, and how to model something that cannot be modeled. I am 69. I have time to figure it out. That is the thing the original model got most right, and it is also the thing the letter in March 2023 could not take away. The 2015 model was built on the assumption that the institutions I depended on would behave predictably. The lesson of 2023 and 2024 is that this is true, and that it is also true that the rules can change, and that the process can change, and that the institutions that administer the change are not required to change them on your schedule or in response to your compliance. I complied for 40 years. The compliance was real, and it produced real results, and I do not regret the compliance. The letter arrived anyway. This is not cynicism. It is the data point that the model was missing, and I have added it, and the model is now more accurate than it was, and accuracy is the thing I have always valued most, and I still have it, and it is enough.